There is a certain kind of person who cannot sit still, even when there is nothing left to run from. They finally get a free Saturday. The house is quiet, nothing is wrong, and their body still won't unclench. Their jaw is tight, their leg is bouncing. Some part of them is scanning for the next thing to fix, even while lying on the couch doing nothing. They might even joke about it out loud. I don't know how to do nothing. Half a brag, half a warning label nobody else quite hears. Everyone around them calls it discipline, a strong work ethic, someone who just knows how to get things done and never lets anything slip through the cracks. Friends envy how much they get through in a single weekend and quietly wonder how they do it, how they never seem to run out of steam, never seem to just collapse onto the sofa the way everyone else does after a long week. But the truth is, this isn't willpower, and it was never really a choice they sat down and made. It's a nervous system that never got the memo it's allowed to stop. The problem isn't that they don't want to rest, it's that their body genuinely doesn't know how anymore. Ask them to relax and something strange happens. The harder they try, the more tense they get, because relaxing itself quietly turns into a task to perform correctly, something else on the list to get right. They can fall asleep exhausted and still wake up tired, because even sleep never fully powers the system down. Over years, this stops looking like a temporary rough patch and starts looking like a personality trait, almost a point of pride, while underneath it, it is quietly wearing them down piece by piece. Today we're going to decode the psychology of people who can never fully relax, and how they can teach a body that's been on alert for years that it's finally, genuinely safe to put the alarm down. First, we have to understand where this actually comes from. Why can some people collapse into a hammock and be asleep in 5 minutes, while others lie there wide awake, arms crossed, brain still running through tomorrow's schedule? Neuroscience gives us a fairly precise answer here, and it starts with a system called neuroception, a term coined by researcher Stephen Porges to describe something your nervous system does completely below conscious thought. Before you ever consciously decide, I am safe or I am not, your body has already scanned the room, the tone of a voice, the pace of someone's footsteps, and quietly made that call for you, faster than thought can follow, faster than you could ever catch it in the act. Porges also describes something called your window of tolerance, the range in which your body can handle stress and still stay calm and think clearly, without tipping over into full alarm. For most people, in a quiet house on a Saturday afternoon, that scan comes back calm, and the body shifts into what's called the parasympathetic state. Rest and digest. Muscles loose, breathing slow, jaw unclenched, shoulders finely down, mind quiet. But for some people, that scan never quite clears, and their window of tolerance stays narrow for years at a time. It almost always takes root the same way. A childhood where letting your guard down actually wasn't safe. Maybe it was a house where you could only really exhale once you'd figured out which version of a parent had just walked through the door. Maybe you learned to listen for the specific weight of footsteps on the stairs, or the particular way a door closed, because that told you more than any words would about what the next hour was going to feel like. You learned to read a room before you ever learned to read a book. Maybe you were the child who had to watch a younger sibling, who never got a moment that was fully theirs, because someone always needed something from you first, and needed it right away. Maybe relaxing was even treated as a small offense in your house, something lazy people did while everyone useful kept working. Whatever the specific shape of it, the lesson landed the same way. Rest is a risk. Stopping means you might miss the warning sign, the one time it actually mattered. Biologically, the amygdala, the brain's built-in alarm bell, learns to fire at the smallest hint of trouble and simply never gets recalibrated back down to a normal setting. And a nervous system that learns that lesson early doesn't unlearn it just because the actual danger disappeared years ago. It keeps quietly running the same old program, sometimes for decades, long after the house is safe and the person who taught it that lesson isn't even in the room or even alive anymore. Scientists call the wear this creates on the body allostatic load, the slow, cumulative cost of a system that never fully gets to stand down, even on the good days, even years later, even now. So what does this actually look like once that wiring reaches adulthood? Let's move to sign 1. Rest has to be earned before it's ever allowed. For most people, sitting down to watch something after a long day is simply sitting down to watch something. But for someone whose nervous system quietly equates stillness with danger, there's an invisible toll booth in front of every moment of rest. They have to check off enough tasks first to have earned the right to stop. They'll sit down, and 30 seconds later a thought arrives. Did I actually finish everything today? And even when the honest answer is yes, some part of them doesn't fully believe it, so they get back up to find one more thing to do, just to be sure, just to be safe. A day off can quietly turn into a cleaning marathon, not because the house needs it, but because an empty calendar feels like an unpaid bill sitting on the counter, staring at them. Psychologists sometimes describe this as a contingent sense of worth, where a person's value, and by extension their permission to rest, is tied entirely to output. Nobody handed them that rule directly, in a single sentence one afternoon. It was absorbed slowly from a childhood where being useful was the surest way to stay safe, or stay noticed, or stay loved. Sign 2. The body itself won't power down, even when everything around it is genuinely calm. This is the part that confuses people the most, because it isn't a thought they're having, it's physical. They go on vacation, lie on a beach with nothing scheduled and nothing to fix, and notice their shoulders are still up near their ears. Their jaw is tight, sometimes tight enough that they wake up with it sore or catch themselves grinding their teeth in their sleep without ever remembering doing it. Their stomach is faintly clenched, the exact way it gets right before something bad is about to happen. Except nothing bad is happening at all, anywhere. This is the sympathetic nervous system, the body's gas pedal, built for fight or flight, stuck slightly pressed down even when there's no threat left anywhere to run from. The parasympathetic system, the brake pedal that's supposed to bring the body back down into rest, simply doesn't get much practice, because it's rarely been safe enough, for long enough, for anyone to actually use it well. A body that spent years bracing doesn't just relax because someone finally told it to, out loud. Muscles that have held tension for a decade don't know any other way to sit. Bracing is the only setting it fully remembers how to hold. Sign 3. They cannot tolerate empty, unstructured time. A friend says, "Let's just hang out, no plan, we'll figure it out as we go." For a lot of people, that sounds relaxing. For someone whose alarm system runs a little hot, it can quietly feel like standing at the edge of a cliff. Unstructured time has no clear ending, no clear task, nothing to point to afterward and say, "There, I did that. That's done, that's handled." So they fill it. They'll suggest an activity nobody actually asked for. They'll bring a notebook to a beach day, just in case. They'll scroll their phone the entire time they're supposed to be doing nothing, because scrolling at least feels like doing something, anything at all, rather than truly nothing. Some of them will even admit, quietly, that they feel a strange flicker of irritation during the exact moments that are supposed to be relaxing, as if their own body resents being asked to just sit there and exist without a purpose. It isn't that they dislike the people they're with. It's that empty time forces them to sit alone with a nervous system that's never once been given real, honest permission to just idle. Sign 4. The moment the body finally stops moving, the mind takes over instead. This is often the cruelest part of the whole pattern. They can be running on fumes all day, genuinely and visibly exhausted, and the second they lie down and the lights go off, their brain suddenly wakes up. It replays a conversation from 3 years ago in painful detail, word for word. It drafts and redrafts tomorrow's to-do list. Some of them wake up at almost exactly the same hour every single night, jolted alert for no obvious reason, heart already going before their mind has even caught up to why, staring at the ceiling until it passes. It's what people mean when they say they're wired but tired. The body has finally slowed down enough for the mind to take the wheel, and the mind, never having fully learned what safety actually feels like, fills the silence with exactly the kind of scanning that once kept them safe as a kid. Cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, doesn't automatically clear out just because it's bedtime. For someone who's spent years on alert, it can sit quietly elevated long after the day's actual stress has ended, keeping the whole system a few degrees too warm to properly power down and stay down through the night. Sign 5. Even when things are genuinely going well, the calm itself feels suspicious. This is the one most people never say out loud. A relationship is going smoothly. Work is stable. Nothing is on fire anywhere. And instead of enjoying it, some part of them starts waiting for the other shoe to drop, scanning a peaceful week for the thing they must be missing. A small hiccup, a slightly short text back, a schedule change, gets treated like proof the good streak was never going to last anyway, that it was always temporary, and they knew it deep down. Ease doesn't register as safety. It registers as a gap in the data, a system error, because their nervous system was trained in an environment where calm was usually the quiet part right before something changed for the worse. So they brace for it anyway, treating good news the same way they'd treat a warning, just in case letting their guard down is the exact moment it turns out to matter most. It's a strange, exhausting kind of loneliness, sitting inside a genuinely good life while some old part of you refuses to fully step inside it. So what can someone actually do when their own body has been treating rest like a threat for years? They can't simply decide to relax and have that work, any more than you can tell a smoke detector to stop being so sensitive and expect it to quietly listen and comply. Telling it to calm down doesn't reach the part of it that's actually in charge, the part running on instinct rather than logic. The alarm isn't broken, and it isn't the enemy here either. It's just been trained on the wrong data for a very long time, in an environment that no longer exists, on a threat that already passed. The goal isn't to rip the wiring out completely. It's to slowly, patiently retrain what the alarm actually treats as a real fire worth sounding for. People who manage to do this well tend to lean on 3 specific shifts. First, they stop tying rest to permission. Instead of waiting to feel like they've fully earned a break, they practice taking one anyway, on purpose, before the to-do list is finished, specifically to prove to their own nervous system that nothing bad happens when they stop early. It feels deeply uncomfortable the first several times, almost wrong, like they're getting away with something they shouldn't. That discomfort is just the old wiring protesting the new information coming in. It isn't a sign they're doing it wrong. Second, they work in small, repeated doses, instead of expecting one big vacation to undo years of bracing in a single shot. A single unclenched breath. 10 seconds of consciously dropping the shoulders away from the ears. A hand resting flat on the chest, just to feel it rise and fall a few times before getting up again. None of it looks like much from the outside, and that's exactly the point. These tiny, repeated signals of safety teach the body far more over time than one long weekend away ever could. The same way you can't rebuild trust with one grand gesture after years of it being broken. You build it back in small, boring, repeated proof, over and over, in the same ordinary moments, until the body slowly starts to believe it. Third, they let the restlessness sit there without rushing to immediately fix it or explain it away. When the urge to get up and do something hits during a genuinely quiet moment, instead of obeying it right away, they simply notice it. Oh, there's that itch again. It doesn't mean anything is actually wrong right now in this room. It's an old alarm firing on pure habit. And like any alarm that isn't followed by an actual fire, it eventually quiets itself down on its own, as long as nobody keeps feeding it a task to prove it right. When people practice this long enough, something genuinely does shift. The alarm system doesn't disappear completely, and it probably shouldn't, since a healthy amount of alertness is still useful in a real emergency when one actually shows up. But it recalibrates. It goes from a smoke detector that shrieks at a slightly overdone piece of toast to one that can finally tell the difference between dinner and an actual fire. They still notice when something is genuinely wrong, sharper than most people even, but without the constant background static running underneath everything. They just stop treating an ordinary quiet afternoon like it's one. That same person, on that same kind of Saturday, can eventually just sit there, jaw loose, coffee going cold on the table beside them, doing absolutely nothing at all, and actually mean it, without a single part of them quietly keeping score in the background. If this sounds familiar, understand this first. The part of you that can't sit still isn't lazy, and it was never broken to begin with. It's a nervous system that learned a long time ago that staying alert was how you stayed safe, or stayed loved, or stayed one step ahead of something you couldn't control back then. That isn't a character flaw you need to fix through sheer willpower alone. That's evidence you got through something, and got through it well enough to still be here, still functioning, still trying, still showing up every day. It just hasn't been told clearly enough, often enough, that it's finally allowed to put the alarm down for good. If you recognized yourself in one of these 5 signs, say which one in the comments. I genuinely read every single one of them. And if this gave you a little more compassion for the part of you that never quite fully switches off, share it with someone else who treats rest like something they have to earn first, every single time. They might really need to hear this today, more than you know. Thanks so much for watching all the way through to the end. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one when it comes out. See you next time.